When we think of the Victorian era, we often imagine elegant ladies in silk dresses, gentlemen with top hats, and the birth of amazing inventions like the steam engine and the telegraph. We see it as a time of golden progress that built the modern world. We think of the Great Exhibition of 1851, where the British Empire showed off its global power. But there is a deep, dark shadow behind that golden light. While the rich were getting wealthier in their stone mansions, a secret world of horror was being built in the soot-covered streets of London, Manchester, and Birmingham. Today on 5 Point Historian, we are stepping away from the palaces and entering the dark, smoke-filled factories. We are uncovering the 5 brutal truths of the Industrial Revolution. We will look at the children who lived inside the machines, the toxic fog that killed thousands, the prisons built for the poor, and the poisonous fashion that hid in every home. Are you ready to see the high price of human progress? Hit like and subscribe. Let's head into the smoke. 1. The children of the gears, the smallest slaves. The first and perhaps most heartbreaking secret of the Industrial Revolution is that it was not built on coal alone. It was built on the backs of children. In the 1800s, there were no laws to protect children. To factory owners, a 6-year-old child was the perfect employee. They were small, they were cheap, they didn't complain, and they were easy to control. In many ways, the entire industrial system depended on these tiny, tired hands, the scavengers and piercers. In textile factories, children had specific, terrifying jobs. Scavengers were often the youngest. They had to crawl under moving machinery to pick up loose cotton while the massive iron machines were still running. One wrong move or one moment of sleepiness, and the heavy gears would crush their small limbs or pull their hair into the engine. Piercers had to stand for 15 hours a day, leaning over spinning machines to tie broken threads. Because they stood for so long in the heat, many children developed permanent bone deformities in their legs. They were beaten by overlookers if they fell asleep or worked too slowly. The chimney sweeps and the climbing boys. In the cities, small boys, some as young as 4, were sold to chimney sweeps. Because they were tiny, they were forced to climb up narrow, soot-filled chimneys that were often only 20 centimeters wide. Many became stuck and died of suffocation, or their skin was burned by hot bricks. They lived in constant filth, sleeping on bags of soot, and they almost never bathed. These children often developed chimney sweeps cancer before they reached their teens. The first brutal truth is that the Industrial Revolution stole the childhood of millions. For these kids, there were no schools, no toys, and no love, only the endless sound of machines and the smell of grease. 2. The killer fog, a sky made of poison. In Victoria's England, if you looked at the sky, you didn't see blue. You saw a thick yellow-black cloud. This was the era of coal. Every factory, every steamship, and every home burned coal 24 hours a day. This created a phenomenon known as the Pea Souper, a fog so thick and dark that you could not see your own hand in front of your face while walking the streets of London. The Great Smog and Respiratory Death. This fog wasn't just water vapor, it was a toxic soup of sulfur, carbon, and soot. The second brutal truth is that the air people breathed was literally killing them from the inside out. Respiratory diseases like bronchitis, pneumonia, and tuberculosis became the #1 killers of the working class. Because the smoke was so thick, it blocked the sun for months at a time. This led to a massive rise in rickets, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin D. Because children never saw the sunlight, their bones became soft and stayed permanently bent or bowed. The environment of coal. The environment was completely transformed. In some industrial towns, the white sheep in the fields turned gray within days, and the white stone buildings turned completely black. People would cough up black spit every morning. There was no escape from the pollution. Even if you were wealthy, the poison was in the air you breathed. The progress of industry was slowly suffocating the very people who built it. This fog also became a cover for criminals. The darkness of the Pea Souper made it easy for Jack the Ripper and other criminals to disappear into the shadows. 3. Slums of despair. Life in the mud. As factories grew, millions of people moved from the quiet green countryside to the crowded gray cities. But the cities were not built for this many people. This rapid urbanization created the slums, areas of unimaginable poverty, noise, and filth. These were the places where the workers lived, and they were often worse than the factories themselves. 10 people, 1 room. The third brutal truth is the living conditions of the working class. It was common for 10 or 15 people from different families to live in a single tiny room with no windows and no ventilation. There was no indoor plumbing, no running water, and no toilets. Entire streets, hundreds of people, shared one single water pump in the middle of a muddy alleyway. The problem? That water pump was often located right next to the cesspools or open holes where people threw their human waste. The cholera ghost. Because people were drinking water contaminated with waste, diseases like cholera and typhoid spread like wildfire. In one famous outbreak in London, hundreds of people died in just a few days. At the time, doctors thought the disease was in the bad smell of the air, the miasma theory. But the truth was much more disgusting. They were drinking their own filth. The slums were not just places of poverty, they were death traps. In some parts of Manchester, the average life expectancy for a working-class man was as low as 17 to 25 years old. If the machines didn't kill you, the water surely would. 4. The workhouse, the prison for the poor. What happened if you lost your job because you were sick, or if you were too old to work? In Victorian England, there was no social security. Instead, the government created a system called the workhouse. While these places were officially built to help the poor, they were intentionally designed to be so horrible that people would rather starve on the streets than go inside. The destruction of the family. The fourth brutal truth is that the workhouse was a system of psychological and emotional torture. When a family entered, they were immediately separated. Husbands were taken from wives, and children were taken from their parents. They were forced to wear ugly, coarse uniforms, and their hair was cut short to strip them of their identity. They were not allowed to speak to each other, even during meals. It was a place designed to make you feel like a criminal just because you were poor. Useless and backbreaking labor. The work inside was intentionally hard and meaningless. Men were forced to break heavy stones into small pieces for roads, or they had to unpick old tar-covered ropes from ships, a job called oakum picking, until their fingers were raw and bleeding. The food was gruel, a thin, watery porridge that was barely enough to keep a human alive. The message from the Victorian government was clear. Failing in the economy is a moral sin. The workhouse was a warning to every factory worker. Accept your low wages and your dangerous job, or come here and lose your family and your dignity. 5. Toxic progress. The poisoned home. The final brutal truth is perhaps the most surprising. Even if you were lucky enough to be middle class and have a nice home, you were still not safe. The Industrial Revolution brought new colors, new chemicals, and new products into the home, but many of them were deadly. The Victorians were obsessed with vibrant colors, especially a beautiful bright shade called Sheila's green. the arsenic wallpaper. The secret ingredient in that beautiful green? Arsenic. It was everywhere. It was in the wallpaper. It was in the paint. It was in artificial flowers. And it was even used to dye the beautiful green silk dresses that women wore to high society parties. As the walls got damp from the English rain, the wallpaper released arsenic gas into the room. People were slowly poisoning themselves while they slept. Women wearing green dresses would develop terrible sores on their skin and lose their hair, not knowing their fashion was killing them. Lead, mercury, and fake food. It wasn't just arsenic. Lead was used in baby toys, kitchen pots, and even in cosmetics. Mercury was used to make the felt for top hats, which caused hat makers to suffer from tremors and hallucinations. This is the origin of the Mad Hatter. Even the food was a lie. To save money, bakers often added chalk, plaster of Paris, or alum to make the bread look whiter and heavier. Some milk was mixed with water and whitened with toxic chemicals. The Industrial Revolution didn't just pollute the outside world. It brought the poison into the very heart of the family home, turning every room into a potential crime scene. The Victorian Era is a story of two worlds that live side by side. One world is filled with golden clocks, giant steamships, and grand exhibitions of human genius. The other world is a nightmare of child labor, toxic air, and poisoned homes. The Industrial Revolution gave us the technology, the medicine, and the comforts we use today. But we must never forget the human price that was paid for this progress. It was a price paid in blood, sweat, and soot by the children in the coal mines and the families in the slums. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay curious, stay historical. I'll see you in the next one.